What's up, YouTube? So I just wanted to do a quick video on Season 2 graphic settings, at least for settings that work for me. So first thing that I want to say in the very beginning of this video is anyone who tells you that their video is like the best graphic settings for like the end-all be-all is not true, because obviously every person's system is different, and even if you have an almost identical system or literally the same exact setup, you still get different performance out of, the electronics, just because some things perform better than others for whatever reason. Same processor might overclock better in one system than the other for whatever reason. So these are the settings that I use, that I've found that allows me to maintain, above, the 100 frames per second mark. I was also getting weird frame drops in this season for some reason, which wasn't really happening in the prior season, because I used to run all of my settings on like quality or balanced, but for the most part it was quality, and now they have like basic and like maximum now or whatever. So I was doing some experimentation with some of the different settings, and the best performance that I'm getting without having those weird frame drops forever is having DLSS on, super sampling is performance, and then having everything else set to performance. You could probably play around with these settings, like I said, based off of your setup. Now I'm running a 3070 Ti with a pretty beefy processor, and I've got a ton of RAM and everything, so the thing that would really be bottlenecking my system is actually the graphics card. But like I said, prior season I was running everything on like, quality, over 100 frames, no problem. This season, for whatever reason, something's changed, so I've bumped it down to performance. Aspect ratio, screen resolution, your screen mode, all that stuff is going to be preference based off of, the system that you have, the monitor that you're using, and if you just want to play in like a lower resolution for, whether it be being able to see things easier, for performance, whatever that is. But I play in 2K. I do play full screen. I don't play full screen windowed. Full screen windowed is better if you're jumping in and out of game and everything. You got multiple stuff that you're doing while you're playing, if you're streaming from one computer, whatever that looks like, but I still leave it on full screen. VSync off, obviously. I set my max frames per second to my monitor's, refresh rate, which is 144 hertz, so I also enable main screen frame rate limit, because you don't need your frames going crazy when you're just in the, main menu. Variable rate rendering, I messed around with this, but when I turned it on and everything, I was getting like weird glitching, screen tearing, just all kinds of weird stuff going on, so I turned that off. And actually it was this was on, so my mistake. That wasn't causing the issue. So this was on. I turned this off. And I did notice too, just by turning this off, that those weird like frame drops and that seemed to stop a little bit, but I was still getting them every so often, so that's why I dropped these down to performance. But the screen tearing and all that stuff actually came from this frame interpolation. I just, played around with it a little bit, and it was doing all kinds of weird stuff, so I just left it as disabled. But the main thing that I want to talk about here in the settings is, again, you kind of have to play with each one of these based off of your system to see what is going to work best for you and how you're going to get the stable frame rate that you're trying to hit. But the vegetation quality, this is the one that if you turn it down to basic, it basically gets rid of, you know, most of like the grass and everything. So the only thing you're gonna see is really like the bushes, the trees, and everything else just looks like a bland like splotch on the ground. So obviously having all this stuff on performance, the game's not going to look the greatest, but you're going to have the highest frames. You can also turn it down to basic on each one of these, but if you go down all the way to basic, I just think the game looks so bad that I can't do it, and I don't need to run it on basic. Now, if you have like a computer from like, you know, 2010 or something like that, and you know you're pushing it to the max, you can throw it down to basic and see if you can, you know, get close to the frame rate that you're trying to hit. But usually performance, you can leave everything on that and you're gonna be fine. Go into sound. Again, this is just preference. Master volume's on 100. UI volume, I turn it down to 20, so when you're messing around with like backpack stuff like that, you can still hear stuff around you easier. Sound effects volume all the way up. Background music, I leave it on a little bit. You know, contact voice volume, like these things are kind of preference. Spatial audio, it was kind of busted in last season. This season, it seems to be better. So from my experience so far, it definitely seems better than what it was last season. So I turned it back on. So I've been using that, so may want to turn it on and give it a try again. If you don't like it, and you don't like the spatial audio, how it sounds, just turn it off. Again, this stuff is all preference right here. Post-processing, I used to play around with this a little bit in-game, but I actually ended up turning everything back down to the default, because at the end of towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you the NVIDIA stuff that you've probably seen a million times, but you can control all of this right from the NVIDIA control panel. So these, I leave alone. You can always mess with them in-game as well, but I usually leave most of that to the NVIDIA control panel. So you can mess with these if you want to. I just turn mine back to default. Controls, obviously, these are all going to be personal preference. There is with the free camera sensitivity, that's when you're doing like the looking around with your like head. So usually if this is lower, it lets you have a little bit more control so your head's not like snapping back and forth when you're trying to, you know, look to your left and right when you're running around and stuff. Quick throw, that's if you just want to hit the grenade button and throw it instantaneously and not have it being held in your hand. This closed backpack, when hit, I would suggest probably turning it on, because last night, literally, I died due to being stuck in a menu, because I was doing, you know, Tetris, and I had about almost 2 mil. It was 1.8 on a farm run, and the last guy on the map came in and killed me because I was stuck in a menu and I was trying to like exit out. Switch weapon after throwing, I would probably have it turned on, that way it goes back to your weapon instead of just sitting there with like, you know, your knife or whatever that is. This again, personal preference, and then obviously, you know, your keybinds are going to be what works best for you. I would suggest using the discard backpack to where, you know, it's just like press or whatever. That way you can drop your backpack really quick. Which is, I have it set to X, but again, you can do whatever. Now, the other thing, the marker. So the marker kind of messed with some of my default settings initially for certain things. So I ended up changing the marker ping to 5 because it was defaulted to middle mouse button, and then like I use my middle mouse to change my sight settings and stuff like that, and I also use it for my free look. So it was kind of, it messed all that stuff up in the beginning. I had to go back and, you know, change that stuff around, but ultimately, your key bindings and that are going to be completely up to you. Like I said, there's certain things that you can turn on or off, and make things easier for you. With the leaning, if you want to be able to do that like quick lean, you have to have it on press. If it's on hold, then I'm sorry, you have it on hold for the quick lean, and then if you want to just lean and be, like you don't have to keep holding it, it's on press. So my lean right, I have it set to my mouse button, so I can do like the quick right peek, and then lean left, because it's a little bit more awkward. I have it to where I hit Q and I just stay in that position, and then I come back. So I try to do more like right peeking than I do left peeking, but that's something you can use there too if you're trying to, do those little quick peeks. Again, this is all just breaking this stuff down so you're seeing less things, but controls pretty much up to you. Now I'm gonna get out of the game because my my game's gonna like freak out if I try to like minimize. So as far as the NVIDIA control panel settings, let me just get in there. Control panel. So blow this up here. So it's going to be under display and adjust desktop color settings. So my digital vibrance is actually turned all the way up to 100%. I may drop that down a little bit. My brightness is default 50%, contrast I think default is 50%, and gamma is the default at 1.0. But digital vibrance, you can see how it affects right here on the slider. But I think I'm going to turn mine down to probably like 80%. I'm still kind of playing around with some of this stuff to see based off of if this is going to be, better in-game for, seeing things. Because the main issue in the prior season was that you had certain maps had dark areas that you couldn't really see in, and like a lot of the windows and stuff on farm and stuff, like if you were inside you could see out, but trying to see into those windows was a pain. So, and then there were some dark corners and things like that, like they're really dark, so kind of cranked up the digital vibrance to make things like brighter and stand out. But with the changes that they made, you may not need it as much, but again, between this setting, if you run the NVIDIA graphics card, and your post-processing settings in the game itself, you can use this to kind of, adjust the image to how you like it, and, again, to try to balance out to get the best performance and frames and everything else. But the last thing that I want to go over too is that, and I just learned this the other day, actually, but this gentleman right here, Critical, Critical, he has a video, he's actually got 2 videos, I think, on DLSS 4 and how to enable it on Arena Breakout. It's super simple if you have the NVIDIA control, or the NVIDIA app, actually. But he has different ways if you want to do it through a script, through, I think just going into like the actual folder itself and not using the app if you don't like the NVIDIA app. But definitely give his video a look-see if you're trying to figure out that, because it actually makes the game look crisper, cleaner, I guess, not as blurry from what I've seen in my own, basically messing around with stuff and how it looked before I enabled it and how it looks now. So it definitely makes a difference, at least from what I can tell. But it's not, DLSS 4 is not enabled in Arena Breakout natively. You have to go in and actually do it yourself, which if you're using the app. I'll show you that real quick. So basically, it's going to be in your graphics. If you've ran Arena Breakout, you'll have like a list of all the programs. So on the side here, if you're at home, you go to graphics, find Arena Breakout, which have it right here, and then where you see DLSS override model presets, you have to edit this, because mine I think was set to this by default, and then you change it to use different settings for each DLSS technology and make sure the super resolution is set to latest, and then that should enable the DLSS 4 as long as you're using, I believe, basically the was it the 2000 series or higher. So if you got like a 20 whatever card, 30 whatever card, and all the way up to, we're up to 5 now, right? So that I just learned yesterday, so that was actually a nice thing to enable there, to make it look a little bit less like washed out and blurry, to where it's almost like it adds a sharpness to it and it looks cleaner. So be sure to give this video a look, and obviously give it a like and subscribe if you like his content. But yeah, just wanted to make a quick little video on what works for me. But again, the most important thing that I can stress is that you'll see all of these videos that say, oh, do this and do that, and these are the best settings, and da-da-da-da. It's the best settings based off of your system and your preferences and what you're trying to get out of the game, you know? So you can use these as a guideline. Like even my video, you can go in and say, okay, this is good, but I want to change this, this, and this. It's what works best for you. It's getting the best performance. And yes, there's certain things that are universal tip-wise, as far as like the quick leans or, you know, certain settings like that. But performance-wise, you're always going to have to kind of play with your own settings to figure out what works best for you. It's no different than DPI settings for a mouse. You know, yes, you can go off of a baseline of what certain people use, but it really depends on what works best for you and, you know, how comfortable you are with that setting. So with that being said, appreciate you watching the video. If you do like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, because it does help me out. And I'm streaming now on Twitch, YouTube, Kick, and probably soon to be TikTok here. So anytime I am streaming, I'm multi-streaming to all of those platforms, so be sure to check those out for me. But you guys have a good one, good luck on the raids, and happy hunting. Peace.